Hey everyone, welcome back to Campfire Story. I got a little bit of a different one for you. This is a true story that happened to me on a backpacking trip. But before we get into it, make sure to hit that like, subscribe button, and comment down below what kind of stories you want to hear. Now this story it's a true story that happened to me when I was out backpacking one time. In fact, it was the beginning of my trip. I was pretty pretty uh I was pretty close to the beginning of my trip. In fact, I didn't even sit down for dinner yet. So I was a couple hours in on I got off on this it was a man-made trailhead. It was intended for backpacking. It was intended for backpackers. It wasn't like your normal, it wasn't like the normal backpacking trips I was doing. I was just looking for something quick and easy. And so I was on this backpacking trip, and it was a couple days after a rain. And you got to be very careful on trails when it's recently rained, because the rain loosens up the soil. And I knew this, and I was cautious. So I started on my way on my backpacking trip. It was supposed to be only a 2-day trip, and it was supposed to actually pop me out pretty close to home. In fact, I was surrounded by city. The wilderness I was in was actually surrounded by city. It was actually kind of interesting. It was a trail I was kind of interested in trying. Supposedly, you can't even hear the city on the trail, and there's campsites along the way, which is I thought was interesting. Kind of sketchy, but at the same time interesting. So I started on this trail, and it was fun. It was so far so good. The trail seemed fairly dry. You could tell the ground was pretty moist underneath, so I was still very cautious. And I came across this trail where there was obviously one time railings, but there's no longer railings because part of the cliff gave way. So I stayed close to the edge. And I'm about a couple hours into my hike at this point, and I'm an experienced backpacker. I don't backpack so much anymore. I glamp now because I'm older. I'm more sore. I have injuries now that are a result of years of abuse on my body. So naturally, I glamp now. I have a cabin tent. I take a truck to go camping. I bring a solar generator. I bring a mini fridge. I bring all kinds of stuff. I glamp now. I luxury camp. I bring a giant air mattress that I don't have to bend down and injure my bad knees or my bad back, and ruin my trip. Versus sleeping in a cot strung up between two bushes, or sleeping on the ground like I have in the past. So I'm a couple hours in on my trip now, and it's a fun trip. It's so far so good. It's pretty easy. It's a man-made trail, and there was signs warning about flash flooding and stuff. It's like all the rain is cleared out. It's clear skies. Um, I brought rain gear and rain protection and all kinds of other stuff just in case, and knew to stay on high ground if where I was setting up camp. Um, so I'm a couple hours walking, just and almost at camp. Now, this part of the trails are managed by the Forest Service. So there's actually a ranger station up the trail. And of course, knowing that, I made sure to get the Rangers radio frequencies, so I was able to program my radio to react to the Rangers radios in a case of emergency. In case my cell phone didn't work, because I wasn't really somewhere where I could plug in my cell phone, but my radio could last several days on the upgraded battery. My cell phone couldn't, you know. So I'm headed down the trail, and I'm walking, just enjoying nature. And this trailhead that I'm heading up, I see the rails are gone, and I'm really cautious of that. I know that the side has given away because it's like a straight drop, and I can see the fresh dirt below, and I can see the water on the. I can see how wet it is from up the trail because it kind of curves around. So I stay along the side, and I pass that no problem. Now another 2 hours in, and I'm closer to camp. I'm almost at camp. When I get to camp, I'm going to set up, eat, get some rest, then hit the trail the next day. So that's the plan. What the plan wasn't was for me to come across another part of the trail that's given way. And there's just a straight drop below. But the difference between this drop and the drop before was there was running water below. So I was still cautious. I stayed close to the cliff wall, and I'm walking and being cautious, and suddenly the whole trail gives way, and I end up under half of the trail. Half my body's crushed by the actual trail itself, which is crazy. My from my pretty much my uh mid stomach down is completely covered in dirt. And I honestly thought, oh my god, I'm going to die here. I'm going to suffocate under this weight. But I quickly realized that I was still able to breathe very well, but with my background in emergency first aid, I realized, oh my god, I'm about to suffer from crush syndrome if I don't get out from under this. Unfortunately, in the fall, my pack ended up crushed under dirt. My pack that had a collapsible shovel that I could have used to dig myself out. It was too much to do by hand, there's too many rocks. But what I did still have access to, was my radio. This is how a radio saved my life. Well, not the radio so much, but the radio being the means to get help. So I pick up the radio, and it was just at the end of the day for the Rangers, and the Rangers don't stay in the park at night. So I was really hoping that a Ranger would pick up. And so I called the Ranger channel, and I called on the frequency the Rangers are on, and and I'm pretty sure they were hesitant to pick up because it was the end of the day. So I called and I said, help, I need help, I'm in immediate danger. This is an emergency, 911, 911. So after a little bit of that, saying, help, I'm gonna die, please help. I'm in immediate danger, please help. I need help. So eventually a Ranger picked up, and they said, this better not be a joke. What's your emergency? I said, the trail gave way up the way from this camp that I'm headed to. The entire path gave way. I'm trapped under dirt. They said, could you use your cell phone? I said, no, it's in my pack under the dirt. All I have is my radio. I don't have food. I don't have anything. I could see barely my strap from my backpack sticking out, but I'm still at risk of the entire slope caving in more on me. So I don't want to pull my pack out. I know it's a bad idea. So I go and I'm talking to the Rangers, and I give a little more description of where I am. So they head up the trail on their Polaris, and they bring shovels, and they call in for backup with SARS teams, and SARS teams come in. Luckily, I'm not too far away, and as the Rangers come up, the SARS teams are coming up on Polarises, and the Rangers are coming up on Polarises. The Rangers get there first because I wasn't far from the Ranger station at camp. So the Rangers come in on Polaris's. They get the call and they come in, and they almost head straight into where the walkway gave way, and I hear just this. There's their tires sliding as they try to stop as they're flying up the trail, and they tried to stop and they could not stop. They were just sliding, and all this like dust and small rocks started coming down, and I was like, oh my god. If that would have came down, it would have crushed me. It would have been a Polaris dropping, a good 20 feet and then landing on me and killing me. So I was like, oh my god. Thank God they didn't go off the cliff. So the Polaris stops, and they call down, and I'm like, I call back and say, yeah, I'm at risk for crush syndrome, but I can breathe. I'm so they're like, okay, what do you need? Is I need rope, and I need people to dig me out. This slope's still very loose. You gotta be careful. They asked what happened. They asked a little more further questions. I said, well, I was walking along the trail, and the entire trail gave way due to erosion. And it wasn't so much a mudslide. It was more like the soil got so loose during the past rains that the entire cliffway gave way right as I walked on it. I was that little bit of weight it needed. And so eventually the Rangers get down, and they manage to propel down. They tie up to their Polaris, and they propel down. And as they get down, like, I see like these headlamps off to the side of me, and they're just shining at me, and I see like a flashlight shining at me, and I'm like, God, get that out of my face. Come on. So I remember saying something along the lines of, get that out of my face, you're damaging my night vision. So if you don't know what night vision is, it's when your eyes adjust to the dark, and it just the slightest bit of light just becomes super bright. It's really bad for your eyes to get sun brightness to them when your eyes are in that kind of position. So when I was so the Rangers eventually make it over, and they hook up a heart monitor and everything. I said, I don't need a heart monitor. I need to be dug out, And they're trying to calm me down. I was like, well, I'm not. I was telling them I'm not freaking out. I know what's going on. I know what the risks are, and I know I've been crushed for far too long. I'm at risk for crush syndrome. I need to reduce it. This weight needs to be reduced immediately, but slowly, but at the same time at a reasonable speed, because I'm running out of time. So they're like, oh, okay, so you know what's up. So I'm pretty much there's agreements that they need to get this dirt off. So eventually, I hear another and it's another Polaris coming up the trail way too fast. It's the SARS teams. They finally arrived and almost went into the ditch where I'm at the bottom of, as well as the other Rangers. So they nearly kill me as well as the Rangers, and they're like, oh my god, the Rangers are mentioning that's terrifying. It's like, yeah, how do you think I felt when you did that? So that wasn't fun. That wasn't fun at all. To almost die by Polaris twice. I wasn't even in them, so that's no fun. At least if I was in them, that would be a better excuse, but I wasn't even at my hand. I was just pinned down. It's like, oh god. It's like being pinned down and having a truck thrown at you. It's not right. But it's like so the SARS teams, they call out. They're like, hello, are you here? And we call down, or we call up to them, and we're down here. And so the SARS teams come down, and I tell them the same thing. It was like, we need shovels. I'm at risk for crush syndrome. You need to get down here with shovels, tie off to your Polaris, go up the trail a ways, move your Polaris away from the cliff edge. It's loose soil. And so they move their Polaris back, and they propel down with shovels, and they have medical bags, and I'm like, again, I don't need this. Just get this dirt off me before I have crush syndrome and die. A heart monitor is not going to do much when you're dead. That's not the priority here. The heart monitor can come later. Right now, we need to save time and get this dirt off me because I'm at risk of crush syndrome. I know what kind of weight's on me. I know what my body can handle. I know what's going on, and I told him like, don't waste time with the heart monitor. Don't waste time asking questions. You don't need to know anything else other than I'm at risk for crush syndrome. So if you don't know what crush syndrome is, crush syndrome is when you have a something like your legs, like in my case, were crushed under extreme weight. Now, what that does is it releases what's normally in your body, but it releases a large amount of it to the point where it's extremely toxic. So your body can take a small amount of toxicity. In fact, your body produces a small amount of toxicity um, through proteins and other stuff and bone marrow and stuff like that. But once that gets into your blood in large amounts, it could cause things like clotting, it could cause heart attacks, it could cause poisoning of the blood, it can make your blood toxic to you, it could be devastating to you. So when you have those kinds of situations, you need to be very careful whenever there's an extreme amount of weight on your body, because crush syndrome is a very serious thing that could kill you immediately. Now, they asked me how long I was buried, and I said long enough to be at risk for crush syndrome. I know how long it takes. I'm not going to say here because I'm not a doctor, but I do have first aid training, and I have dealt with situations like that before. So eventually they get me out, and I have a long talk with the Rangers as they put me into Polaris and one of the Polarises, and we drive out to where an ambulance is. Mainly because a Polaris can make the trail time no problem. A helicopter would be a waste of time. You know, it would actually take longer to get a helicopter there than it would be to get a Polaris to an ambulance that's on standby as they get me out. So they make the decision to have an ambulance on standby in the parking lot of the trail. So they drive me back to the trailhead in a Polaris. They make sure my legs are secure in case they're broken. They make sure everything's on the up and up and good. And you know, generally it was an eye-opening experience. I knew I shouldn't have been on that trail, and I knew I shouldn't have been in that situation where I ended up putting myself in that situation. And you know, that was really just kind of stupid on my end, and I knew what kind of dangers I was in. I knew I was in a dangerous situation, and I was just taking unnecessary risks. So I guess the moral of the story here is don't go on backpacking trips in areas where there's cliffs or after it rains, because water erodes soil. So ultimately, that's the story of how I almost died on a backpacking trip. I didn't fall off a cliff, the cliff fell from under me. So that's fun. So anyways, thanks for listening. Again, this is Campfire Stories. It's not always scary stories. Sometimes they're pretty interesting stories. So, yeah, this is Campfire Stories. Like and subscribe. Have a good one.